Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the all-new Ghost and Spirits video. Well, for this one, I wanted to mix this in while working on some of the other videos here. This one because I'm reading a current book that chronicles not just some of the more well-known, famous haunted spots here in Central Texas, but also some of the lesser-known ones. And in fact, I was surprised to read that the subject matter of this video, in this case the Alamodome, is haunted by several ghosts, and there are in particular certain occasions and certain spots that definitely have those type of sensations. So I thought I would chronicle it here for everyone and share all this rich information. And also, if you want to check out the book that I'm reading, I'll include the link for it below. It's called Ghost Hunting San Antonio, Austin, and Texas Hill Country. And then that way you too get to read all that rich information tied there. But first, let's go ahead and let's talk about here, in this case, the ghost of the Alamodome. First, though, let's mention just a brief history about the Alamodome itself, and then talk about what may have led to its hauntings before we describe actually the hauntings themselves. So the Alamodome is, of course, located near San Antonio, especially close to the Alamo itself. If you've ever been there, you'll notice it's very distinct. Like, it has a very distinct visage from the outside. In fact, I remember at the time during this construction that there was a lot of controversy involved, because essentially it was a way for the San Antonio Spurs to get a new venue. But I remember there was controversy involving, who's going to pay for it, how it's going to be set up, and so on. And further controversy whenever the Spurs decided to leave that location. But yeah, also the Alamodome was set up because there was the idea that it would not only house maybe future NFL teams, but also Super Bowls and then potentially NHL teams as well. None of that came to play afterward, but that was the whole big dream associated with this building. And then not only that, but it was built to house lots of concerts and other type of events. Like, I think it was at WWF or WCW hosted a huge one there, and then there was a country star that also had an event there. I think that was George Strait, if I'm not mistaken, and it filled up the entire place too. But yeah, otherwise you can use half of it if you wanted to, because it's set up in a way where you can have these big giant black curtains that'll cut the stadium in half, or it'll cut it into quarters, and it can house smaller events. Either way, though, the Alamodome never really got the full plans done that everyone was counting on it. And it's still there to this day. It just doesn't have too many, like, it has events, but it doesn't have the big name events that I was mentioning earlier, the big planned ones, in other words. But as far as the hauntings, let's talk about that here. So this land that it was on apparently has had a lot of history, bad history, tied to it. And this is well before the days of the Alamo. Apparently there was a lot of Native Americans that lived there. They had their own battles that they've had between themselves. And then, of course, when the Western civilization started moving and encroaching on their territory, there were even more continued battles there, leading to potential hauntings. And then also, of course, there was the Battle of the Alamo that happened nearby, and somewhere along that area, the very same ground that the Alamodome is on today, there were many battles that occurred there too. Many people that died during those battles, leading to further hauntings. So that's at least leading up in terms of the way past history. On a more present level, there's this. Before the Alamodome was constructed, that area there was apparently known to be a bad spot. It was like a bad part of town. You didn't necessarily want to be there after dark. There were a lot of crime rates that were occurring there, a lot of stuff that was happening that to this day may or may not have answers to them, like a lot of crimes that went unresolved. And so because of it, who knows, but the ghosts at least still try to find some answers afterward. It was very sad when I was reading the information, because especially when the ghost here that I'll talk about in a minute, you can find her in the parking lot, and she's apparently tied to those previous crime rates. But let's go ahead and let's talk about at least the hauntings themselves that people can find within the Alamodome, and again surrounding that location. One of the big ones is this. If you go there into the area, you're bound to hear some kind of wailings within the Alamodome. Apparently, that's right, like the workers that work there. We're talking about maybe people that are there cleaning about or doing some other type of maintenance, maybe even small construction here and there. In other words, not full of fans and stadiums and events. No, but in this case, just a small crew that's there. They constantly hear the wailings of somebody that is nearby. And then also another factor is this: people have these cold spots that occur, especially if they're either working or sitting in some of the upper levels. So if you're ever there in the Alamodome and you happen to go to an event and you happen to be in one of the higher seats, who knows, you may suddenly experience a very severe cold spot, and then that's attributed to the ghosts that roam around there. And then on a visual level, people actually see spectral ghosts floating about. Like they'll see someone walking around the corner somewhere in the far hallway. Nobody's supposed to be there, of course, and then when they go inspect, then that's when nobody's there. And then another one, I was reading a situation of a young man who was doing some maintenance work on the floor level. He saw somebody from another corner there in the Alamodome, a young woman who seemed to be floating straight towards a doorway. And then when she entered that area that was cordoned off and he went to inspect, he didn't see anybody that was there. Another thing that people see, or at least on a visual level, is this: elevators not working. Either they don't respond to your commands, or they don't go to the floors that you're trying to go to, or they don't even move at all. Like, in other words, you're trying to make sure that the elevator is functioning and you're trying to get to a certain level, but nothing happens. Lights are also seen turning on and off during the same time period, again, that maybe maintenance is happening, or it's the dead of night and obviously nobody is there and it's just security or someone else within the building. They'll see lights turning on and off by themselves. There's also the sensation that people have whenever they go to certain areas, like they're being watched. That's another thing that I read there too. Apparently that happens as well in the restrooms. When you're by yourself, let's say in the restrooms, and then all of a sudden you have that creepy sensation like somebody is just watching you from an area, that's essentially what is happening there. One of the ones that struck me the most, though, was this. There was apparently a large set of window panels. I think those are the ones that are attributed to those suites. You know, those fancy suites that have their own boxed area where people have refreshments and then they have their own servers. Usually for the higher class people that pay a lot more money for those areas. Well, those window panels that surround those suites, people have heard them being slammed hard, like almost like someone is taking a hand and then slamming them right against the window. And this is from people that are on the ground level, let's say by the court itself, and then they hear that stuff happening from afar. They're looking upward, and then obviously nobody is there. Pretty eerie when I was reading that information, because imagine that happening, and obviously you're going to be by yourself and nobody's supposed to be up there. And then surrounding the locations, there's definitely that woman that I was mentioning earlier. She's in fact one of the more famous ghosts, if you call it that, of the Alamodome. Apparently, if you're there late at night by yourself, you may see this woman aimlessly walking around the parking lot. Apparently, she was killed there by someone else. No one knows what happened. No one knows the crime itself. No one knows the date specifically, the woman's name, nothing like that. But she's always walking around that parking lot, usually farther away from you, aimlessly looking around, crying in some cases, just trying to find out like what's happened to her in the afterlife. And it seems like she was obviously killed in a horrific manner, and she's just been doomed to repeat whatever her wailing is or whatever her aimless shuffling is forever. And so she'll always be there in that parking lot because of her unfortunate circumstance. She actually seems to be the more common one, like the one you would find the most. The situation, though, has to be right. Like, you can't say leave a concert there in the middle of 10,000 other people at the same time and see her wandering about. It seems to be more of you have to do it while you're by yourself. Like, let's say it's very late at night, you're the last person to get out there in the festival or the concert, the parking lot is almost empty, then that's when you see this person. And then another ghost that happened, this one can be attributed like another curve. In other words, this really did happen. This is something that unfortunately it occurred during an Alamodome show, and so because of it, there could be a ghost directly attributed to it. This happened in the early 90s. There was a stunt that went horribly wrong. In this case, there was a man who was there performing a show, and as he was performing it, his stunt car, was supposed to crash into another car as well. So this particular car, both of them were going to smash together in the front, and the idea was that they were going to do it at the same time from a ramp going 50 miles an hour. It had to be perfect because that way both cars would essentially hit each other right in the front as opposed to what occurred next. The stuntman's name, by the way, was Randy Hill. What made it really tragic was he had come out of retirement just to do this particular stunt. And so imagine if he decided to stay retired, he would still be alive pretty much today. But he came out of retirement, and then B, his family was watching at the very same time. His wife and his 3-year-old son were right there in the audience. So his car ramped up and then went straight towards that ramp, and then the other car did so as well. But for whatever reason, one car, I don't know if it was Mr. Hill's or if it was the others, one did not hit the right time on the ramp. And when that happened, one car was basically higher than the other one. And you can imagine what happened next. The horrific thing. Basically, one car sheared the other car on the bottom in half, like from the top portion of the car. It was just completely sheared off. That was the car that Mr. Hill was in, the one that got sheared off. And so he was instantly killed because of it. And people state that his ghost apparently still roams to this day there in the Alamodome because of it. And then I was trying to read about another factor, another ghost that's around there too. And that's about a construction worker who got killed during some form of maintenance. Two of them, actually. One during the construction of the Alamodome, but I couldn't find any information tied to that. I think that may be more on the lines of an urban legend. And then another one involving further maintenance being done on the Alamodome. Like, let's say after it's been long constructed, it's there, and then they're doing further maintenance there, like within some kind of electrical work. But there was some debris that fell down and it hit him. But I couldn't find the information on that, too. But in any case, both of their ghosts seem to roam that location too. So as you can see throughout this video, good number of examples, not just from the way past history, but also during the current present, as far as what could be leading to all these ghosts, from either ghosts of Native Americans, Texas soldiers, construction workers, stuntmen, people killed, like that poor unfortunate woman. All of them seem to be there within the Alamodome. So remember that next time when you're there, either for an event, a business meeting, whatever it could be, a conference, you may have a chance to actually encounter one of these ghosts there. So, but if anybody has any more experience about that, anybody been there to the Alamo themselves and had any of these cold sensations or feelings of being watched, stuff like that, then please let me know. I've never been there to the Alamo Dome myself. I had plans one time, but it just never came to fruition. So I've only just seen it from afar. Very impossible to miss. Like when you're driving downtown San Antonio, you pretty much always see it within a certain area. But otherwise, I've never seen it in person, but I'm sure others here listening have, and so it'd be great to hear what your own experiences are. So all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.